The Cyber Loyalist, bridging the gap between cutting edge tech, science fiction, and pop culture to unravel how today's innovations shape our world and predict tomorrow's possibilities. Join GU and Data Streamer as they dissect the philosophies behind cyberpunk aesthetics, anime narratives, and gaming worlds to see what they reveal about our future. Like and subscribe now, and get ready to explore the intersection of reality and sci-fi. The Cyber Loyalist, online now.
It felt like the Dutch media is suddenly, maybe not suddenly, but I noticed that they've been talking about the big tech companies again, Facebook, YouTube, or even Musk.
Yeah,
And
it's
it's
suddenly
like they're
relevant
under
again.
fire, they're under fire again. Okay, but in this video, someone in the parliament is specifically it show it it felt as if they are really going to encounter them, something like that. Yeah, the big
That's
corpos.
yeah, that's kind of funny that this video came out like a week ago or so from the VPRO, a Dutch public
Yeah, institution.
me- media institution. Yeah, exactly, media institution. And the funny thing is that like a few days after this video came out, Mark Zuckerberg announced the Facebook moderation change. It's pretty funny because the contents of this video are about how the European Union is some parts of the European Union are trying to regulate these massive companies, and now suddenly Mark Zuckerberg is like a few days later is like the complete opposite of this of that what the video said that the EU wants to do, or at least some parts of the EU want to do.
Is it
So
perhaps because they're yeah he I mean they're under fire for a longer time than this, right?
oh yeah, of course, because they don't really like rules, and they break rules constantly, and they have not been regulated as heavily as other companies have been in the past, and they love saying stuff like they need to what do you call it, they can't be regulated because they to innovate and that kind of stuff. But in reality, every single company and sector and whatever you call it, it has been regulated, is regulated, and will be regulated. And nothing's really happening on the innovation front. I mean, the U.S. loves to say that they like U.S. government, and also people from the U.S. they love to say that because they have lower regulation that they innovate and that kind of stuff. But the innovation in the U.S. comes mainly from that they are what do you call it? They more freely spend money than in Europe. That's where the innovation in the U.S. mostly comes from. It's not because they have different or less regulation. Spend more money. That's the difference. And they
Wait,
and
who
they
spends
they
more
don't.
money? Are
The
you talking
U.S.
now about about the government
Yeah.
or the? Okay.
It's the companies, the government as well. Generally, everybody in the U.S. just spends more money, and they borrow money very easily, even when they don't have. Somehow, in the U.S., you can get credit very easily compared to Europe. In Europe, there's a lot more scrutiny on this, and that causes to have cause them to have more innovation. But they are under the misunderstanding that it's because of regulation. Have regulation in the U.S. as well. Well, people just don't somehow. I've had this discussion online with people all the time. They're like they hate Europe because of regulation, and then when you start citing all the U.S. regulations, they're like they just like, for example, where there's like regulation on how to build a house, for example. In Europe they
Yeah.
call it regulation, but in the U.S. they call it a building code. And it's like, and then it's like, yeah, but what is the building code? Where does that come from? And then when you tell them, yeah, that actually comes from the government and it's a law, because that's a regulation. And then they're like, they it's like this weird conversation because they think somehow regulation is not a law or something like that. It's really weird. It's really and so there's this weird online discourse going on when it comes to Europe and innovation and regulation within the continent. It's pretty annoying. It's pretty annoying, but the most annoying part is that somehow Mark Zuckerberg is also falling into this same trap because he said the same things that you hear these online people say that oh yeah, because Europe it has more regulation, there the innovation is lower or something like that. And it's like people really need to research this more and find out what is actually going on with these kinds of things, because the fact is these companies are just as regulated in the US as in Europe. The only thing in Europe that's different is that Europe has hate speech laws where the US does not have those laws. So in Europe you can't like say can't say things like deny the existence of the Holocaust or that kind of stuff. In the US you can. Those are some differences because these companies deal with like speech and people posting on there, you
Hmm.
know, it means that in Europe they have a bit more moderation to do, because if somebody says something about like the Holocaust or whatever, or any other kind of thing, they have to be moderated in Europe, but not in the U.S. So from their perspective, they feel as if there's more like regulation over here, but in reality, there's not that much. Also, we did introduce a GDPR, and GDPR is the law that governs companies are allowed to do with our private data. It governs how much of that data they can collect, and it also governs what they can exactly do with that data when they have it. Uh,
Yeah.
that law was introduced by the European Union,
In order
and of
to,
course they hate it.
it's also in order to protect our data, right?
Yes, yes, of course. That law is completely designed for the people, for the users, to protect users. And of course, these companies really hate the law because now we have to do all these kinds of things. I have seen websites that have been taken down or have removed access from Europe because of the GDPR. So that means as a European, you can't visit this website. I've seen that happen because there was a lot of like people complaining that now suddenly they're gonna fracture the internet because of this law and all this kind of stuff, blah blah. So all you saw suddenly saw all these websites shutting down for Europe, so that they wouldn't have to do anything with the law, so they don't have to change their business or whatever due to this law. So they just stopped serving Europe. I've seen that. The biggest companies, of course, just like all these small companies that think it will cost them too much money to do anything with that law. But yeah, I mean, it's their loss, their problem. The law is there to protect, the, the
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 people.
people, and
Yeah.
the companies. Well, yeah, well, deal with it. That's how it goes.
Yeah.
It's just I mean, it's like if you're complaining that there's a law against there's a law forcing companies to build buildings that can withstand earthquakes in an earthquake zone. I mean, it's too expensive to build a building that survives earthquakes. I mean, sure, they're more expensive than normal, but you're in an earthquake zone, so just build a stupid building.
But the regulation about hate speech, right? It
Yes,
feels like that they feel in America as if it's blocking the freedom of speech.
yes, yeah, they do. They it depends on how it's used, but up to now in Europe, I haven't found any like moment where this regulation was used incorrectly or abused. I mean, I'm sure somebody in the comments will probably be like, "Yeah, this thing," and then when you look at it, it's actually not what they're saying. They love to. On the internet, people love to embellish a lot of things, and then when you actually look at what's been said or what's been done, it's actually like, yeah, okay, they really did break that law. But the U.S. The U.S. doesn't like. Let me say they don't like regulating speech over there, and I get it. I mean, I'm not a fan of regulating speech either. I mean, for example, the hate speech laws in European Union are abolished tomorrow. I wouldn't care. I'd be like, okay, that's fine, no problem. Who gives a shit? It's no big deal because I still have the opinion that the only way to combat bad speech is to have more speech, is to talk to them and keep the conversation going. But whatever, we
Mm.
have those laws, but those laws aren't really that bad. And then I mean, it's really just regulating like the really crazy things people say, and it's also because of the European history. It's because of World War II and World War One and things that happened there with speech that the U.S. did not have. And I'm pretty sure if the U.S. had a situation like World War II or World War One, when it comes to speech and politics and that kind of stuff, they would have similar laws as hate speech as well. They would not have the First Amendment the way they have it now, because they would recognize that if you have completely unmoderated speech in that way, that it can go really bad really quickly.
Yeah,
But they don't realize that because they haven't been in that situation before in their entire history as a
yeah,
country, you know.
yeah.
So that's
So
why they're like that.
yeah, but let's get back to the beginning of our conversation about
Yes, yes,
the current big tech companies.
yeah,
I'm not naming names now, but because let's also get back to our core, right?
yeah.
Comparing it with cyberpunk literature from in the
Yeah.
past.
Yes, of course.
Uh, if you look at the current cyberpunk game, they're being called big corpos.
Yes, of course. The big corpus. It's pretty funny how this entire genre just like I don't know how they did it, but it's like there's a lot of predictions that completely came true in a lot of these media, and it's like, and even if some of them are not true or did not happen, they're like really close, and it's like really crazy how that happened. Like just like these big corpos, they really have this power suddenly out of nowhere that way more than in the past. I mean, like 30 years ago, you would just buy products and that's it. You would buy a car, but beyond that, there's nothing much they could do. Maybe fight some regulation on some kind of car thing or whatever, but some kind of car regulation maybe here and there. I don't know, that kind of stuff. Or you would buy a camera, and I mean, what could they do? Like, it's just like you just buy the camera, big deal. But these days, I mean, even cars are internet enabled these days. you know, you buy a car, you get an internet with it, and they're like connected, and they're like, it's like, and then suddenly the car company can suddenly determine what you can do with the car or not. you know,
Yep.
suddenly there's like some kind of end user license agreement that you have to agree to when you first start up the car because they're internet enabled and they have these things and they have these features, and it's like, oh, you gotta blah blah, and it's like, what is going on? It's really weird, and that's very similar to the cyberpunk predictions of those things where companies just have this weird power over people, and it's actually surprising how accurate it all turned out. So yeah, that's the part that's really funny, especially when you see the last week where or when it comes to like these companies are doing in preparation for the Trump administration. Um,
Hmm.
it's like, yeah, okay, they're really paying attention to the politics, and then they're really like trying to stay out of the out of the fray when it comes to the next regulations. They're preemptively doing things, but how they influence people these days, it's really odd. It's really surprising. It's just
What
like
is
in
it?
those cyberpunk. Yeah.
Yeah, is it predicted in a cyberpunk movie or book or anything on how
Yeah.
big corpos were, they were how how cyberpunk literature illustrated how big companies would influence people. That's
Yeah.
Was that
Yeah.
already illustrated?
Yes, of course. It's a thing that's like one of the core, I would say one of the core things that cyberpunk is about, is the corporate influence of people and culture, and it manifests itself in the world. And almost that is literally the core of every single one of these stories. And these stories, they of course they are different in every way, how they manifest that influence of the corporations, but they still all do manifest the influence of the corporations. So that's like really funny. But the one that the one that did it the most, how you say it, the one media that did the influence in the most realistic way. I mean, realistic. I mean, it is the most similar to what we have right now. Because I mean, you have like books like Neuromancer, where there's corpo influence, but I mean, the internet didn't exist back then, so it's all like really. You could read Neuromancer like some kind of magic book, because it's like really like yeah, it's not. Let me see. It's like somehow there's like this technology stuff happening, but it's like kind of somehow happening. It's There's like really little grounding for it in the way that if people would write cyberpunk media these days, it would be like, we have the internet, we have social media, we have all blah blah, we have all this stuff. But in Neuromancer, that didn't happen, and William Gibson didn't really have an idea how exactly that stuff happened. So it's mostly like isolated things, like people are like hacking into mainframes and like that kind of stuff. And so it's different. But Ghost in the Shell standalone complex, that one has the media influence, the corpo influence of the media, or government influence of the media and people, is closest to the way it is today. I mean, I remember in one episode, Motoko Kusanagi, the main character, even joined a chat room full of these, like, like just an internet chat room, and they were like just all these, and they knew exactly what types of people talk about this stuff online, because you had like the clueless one, you had like the ultra nerd guy that knows about all these kinds of things and brings up all this stuff. You even had lurkers in the chat room, just sitting there listening in. I remember this was one shot of this one guy, because it was a virtual chat room, so it was like VR chat room. So
Hmm.
they were their own avatars, just sitting in the chat room, just talking to each other. But you had like people on the sidelines. And I remember one guy was just like listening in, and you saw him like processing the information and stuff like that in one of these scenes. So um and also with in the show, they had this whole laughing man thing.
Oh yeah.
Um the laughing
He was a
man,
hacker, right?
yes, it was a hacker. And the most hilarious thing was that the laughing man incident in the Ghost in the Shell show was exactly replicated years later with the anonymous movement.
Oh shit, yeah.
Yeah, it was exactly anonymous. I mean, but the only difference was that the Laughing Man was a central figure that started it, and then people started copying him. Anonymous just was always just anonymous. There's no really central figure. There was a really central figure. So, but still, it predicted exactly how the anonymous movement would operate, and would be, uh, uh, you know, um, reacted to by the media and the corporations and the government. It was like when the anonymous thing, the movement started. I was like, what is going on? And the funny thing is that a lot of people in the anonymous movement even use the laughing man icon as
Mm.
their thing. They
So
weren't
in a
using the
way,
guy. Yeah,
yeah. So in a way, they got influenced as well by
yeah,
Ghost in the Shell. Okay.
yes, exactly. There is some clear influence for anonymous from the Ghost in the Shell anime. And of course, I mean, it makes sense because Anonymous came from 4chan, and 4chan is a website about Japanese culture. They had a political board, but the political board did not exist at the time when Anonymous started. Anonymous started in on the on the B board, on the random board. But whatever, that's another thing. But those kinds of things exactly show exactly how like more realistic the depiction of like this corpo influence was in Ghost in the Shell than in like a Neuromancer or anything. But of course, Ghost in the Shell is a lot newer, especially the show Standalone Complex is way newer. So they had more knowledge about how the internet actually works when it comes to just the users, just people, normal people using the internet. They had more knowledge about that than when Neuromancer was made in the early '80s, because that wasn't a thing. Normal people were not on the internet in the early '80s. It was not a thing, you know. So the corpo influence is different there, and it's more esoteric. It's more like kind of hand wavy because they have influence, but it doesn't really explain how exactly, and it doesn't really exactly translate to the real world in the way that like a Ghost in the Shell does translate to the real world over here. You know.
So what do you think will happen now with the big corpos? Now it will be stronger regulated,
They will receive more regulation from the EU at least. I think that they will be losing regulate. They will be probably dropping regulation from the Trump administration. They don't like regulating their things, so that would be that's gonna be a big difference there with the EU and the U.S. The next 4 years for the U.S. are going to be very interesting.
oh
we're going
yeah.
to see what's going to happen. But when it comes to regulation, the EU is not changing its ideas. They will be regulating these companies, and as you saw in that video we talked about that Dutch video we talked about earlier, um, the 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 parliament member that was interviewed, they I mean, the video literally started with an interview with a parliament member, and the parliament member was like, "These companies were not regulated, had received zero regulation for the past 20 years. So now it's time to change that." I'm paraphrasing, but that's pretty much what they said. So it's like these companies are not they're gonna get regulated, and they more heavily regulated than they are now in the EU. And of course, they're gonna use their power to influence people into making them think that the regulation is bad for innovation. That regulation is gonna destroy the company. It's gonna destroy the internet. You just watch. They're gonna be doing that kind of. You're gonna be seeing a lot more of that kind of rhetoric coming out. Trump is gonna be saying it. It's gonna be talking about how the EU is destroying the internet. I'm pretty sure he's gonna say it. You're gonna see
Why? Yeah.
there's gonna be this big ideological war on this kind of things. Yeah.
Yeah. So why do you think they will think it will actually destroy the internet?
Because they don't want to be regulated. They don't want to change how they work, how they
But
operate, to
what would
comply to some laws.
what would their idea be of internet being destroyed?
They that's the funny part. It's really vague. They don't really say. They don't really say what's the actual issue. I mean, we said earlier when Zuckerberg made that video announcing the changes to Facebook. He just kind of said the EU has more regulation, so that's annoying or whatever. I'm paraphrasing him, but that's like, oh, but such the EU has more regulation, blah blah blah. And then and then he just kept on talking about whatever he was talking about. He didn't really explain what he really meant with the EU regulation thing, and he just kind of whatever, just kept on talking, and it's like okay, and he hasn't really mentioned it since. I did see that he went on the Joe Rogan podcast. I have to see that video still, but that's like 2.5 hours. He went on there like
With Trump?
yesterday. No, Mark Zuckerberg went on the Joe
Oh yeah,
Rogan podcast.
sorry. Oh, okay. Interesting.
Yeah, that was like yesterday. I saw like the first 5 minutes, but it's like almost a 3 hour podcast. I'm like, okay, I'll check it out when I have some time. But I'm not sure if he I don't know if he went into detail into what he meant with the EU regulation. But still, he just said it, just whatever, and then people just say it. They just say it. It's like whatever. They just say it, and that's it. And it's like okay, but what is it really? They don't really. They never really explain. So they don't
Yeah.
really. So I'm not personally. I'm not really even sure what they mean that with whatever with that line because they never explain. And online, people never explain it either.
So, dear listeners, if you have more information about this and on what your view is on the regulations we have in the EU, please let us know in the comments.
Yeah. Yes. Please let us know because as far as I know, it's only like GDPR, and GDPR is about your private data.
Hmm.
And it's not about the company. The company could go fuck himself with GDPR. It's like whatever. Like for example, like GDPR there was this train company in France
Yeah.
that when you were buying tickets, they asked if you were a man or a woman
Yeah.
buying tickets for the train. Um, Yesterday, the news came out that the EU regulator told them to stop doing that because knowing if a person is a man or a woman is completely irrelevant for buying a train ticket. So the company has to stop doing that.
Yeah.
That's the kind of thing GDPR does.
Yeah.
So I don't know why that's scary to these people, why it's bad, because like who cares what you buy you're buying a ticket, what does it matter, man, woman, whatever. So the company has to remove the question entirely, and it's the court was very explicit. The court was like, no, it's not a equality thing where they suddenly have to ask if you're a third gender or whatever, like you're a he, she, them, they, whatever. It's not about that. It's about the basic question of gender of any kind that is completely irrelevant for buying a ticket to the train.
Now, is
And
it more,
it's
but
yeah,
for the train company, it's I can assume that it's for their marketing or just their
yes,
research on who is
yes,
taking the train more, right?
exactly. And but it's completely irrelevant data. And that's what GDPR does. It regulates companies in what kind of data they can use based on the type of company they are and based on the type of product they are selling. So if this company is just selling a train ticket, it's irrelevant information to have a gender on the ticket.
Mm-hmm.
And they were reprimanded and they have to remove all that stuff, blah blah blah.
Right.
That came out yesterday. So that's the scary type. That's the scary regulation these companies are talking about that does this kind of stuff. So I really wonder what the big deal is in all of this stuff. Really, it's like
Yeah.
okay, so what now? So now so you want to just have people, you want to just collect gender data on your customers, that's at it, that's why you're mad. I mean, like look, if it's relevant to the product, having gender data, then the GDPR won't be an issue. That's how it works. you know I don't know what's gender relevant, what's a gender relevant product.
Makeup.
Maybe a makeup tampons, yes, that could be,
Yep.
maybe, I don't know. But even then, you would assume a tampon is used by women. But I mean, I don't know. Maybe somebody figured some other kind of use for those things. I have no idea. I mean, they're very absorbent, so you could probably use them for different kinds of
Yeah,
I don't know
I'm sure people
things.
actually do put it in their ass with alcohol, so you get drunk
Yeah,
faster.
Oh yeah, that trick. Oh yeah, that okay, that yeah, true. But I mean, but I don't think that's. But on the other hand, I don't think that's like a market the company wants to market to. You know what I mean? They're not making ads about how you can get drunk faster with those things. So even then, that's like it's probably still is irrelevant data even for a product like that. But I mean, I'm not an expert on GDPR, but that kind of stuff, that's the kind of thing that GDPR regulates.
Yeah,
If the data they collect is relevant to the product or company, it's fine. If it's not relevant, the company will get fined and should not be collecting that data. That's how it
yeah.
works. Yeah,
I mean, you had GDPR training at your work.
not my current work, but my previous work, I had some. Yeah,
Yeah.
but
So
it's
this is
not
something we
really.
also get. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's not really like it's more like general. We didn't really go deep
Hmm.
uh, nitty gritty of the thing. It's more like what's immediately relevant to the work I'm doing currently, and
Yeah.
it all basically comes down to just watch out with the data. Don't just tell people things.
Yep.
Don't just say names. That kind of stuff. It's very basic stuff that we had to do. That kind of stuff. Yeah, it's not really like the it's not at like the level of legal, the legal department has to do with that kind of stuff. It's not
Yeah,
like that.
exactly. And also, uh, usually these trainings are also in a way to avoid being hacked, right?
Hacked. Oh
Basics.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly that kind of stuff. Yeah, and
Yeah.
also they're in a way also a way to for companies to like say that they did the work to get the GDPR thing
Yeah.
rolling in the
For the
company
I
and to
for the
avoid.
ISO to get a
Yeah, and
license
to exactly to get a
certificate.
license, get ISO certificate, all that kind of stuff, and to avoid the eyes of the EU regulators. Uh,
Yeah.
that kind of stuff. So it's kind of like yeah okay they're doing something, but it's like whatever. Is it really something?
Yeah.
I mean, if they're really fucking up their GDPR, they're gonna get nailed by the EU regulator at one point or another. So it's like whatever. This course that they're doing won't really help them. They're if they're actually screwing up GDPR stuff,
Yeah.
they're gonna get regulated eventually, you know,
Can
that kind of
can
stuff.
we can we refer to Ray Kurzweil for him um, predicting things like this?
Um, Not really. He's more of a technology guy. He doesn't really predict how companies behave. He just predicts technology. He predicts systems. He predicted like for example, one of his most famous predictions, I believe, was that he predicted like in the 60s or something like that. He predicted like the mobile phone, like 30 years before it happened. And he and he
No.
and he and he gave a date as well. Like the date was like almost like 5 years difference than what he predicted. So within a
Really, just
5 year
like
margin.
the basic mobile phone, not the smartphone we're talking about, right? Or
I think it was a mobile phone, but it might have been the smartphone, but I'm not sure. I'm not exactly sure. But yeah, he
okay.
predicted. He's more of that kind of guy predicting technology, and yeah, he's one of the more accurate ones out there. Some company assessed his predictions and they found that he was like 86% accurate. So that's really high for that kind
Yeah.
of thing. This crazy 86% accuracy. But it's
Since
mostly it's
you,
not.
yeah,
He doesn't talk behavior, and this is what
yeah,
we're talking about
okay,
today. Behavior of
yeah.
these companies.
But speaking of which, and now we've mentioned it, the smartphones.
Yeah,
So the big corpos are really using the smartphone, right? Keeping people addicted to their product, to their big corporate product.
yeah,
I, they are, I mean, people are also talking that they actually do research on how to keep people addicted and hooked to their product.
yeah, yeah.
But was there a, was this, was the combination smartphone and smartphone addiction also predicted in a way? in cyberpunk media.
Yes, it was not exactly like smartphone,
Uh-huh.
more like people were like addicted to like because you had like in a lot of these media you had like VR headsets and that kind of stuff. Because VR is an older idea, and VR was actually started like the idea of VR was like is comes from like the late 70s, early 80s through mid 80s, and was also finally realized in the 90s. I mean, even Nintendo had
Oh yeah.
that VR headset thing in like from like 1991 or whatever it was.
Yeah, the red with
You know,
red with black. Yeah.
yeah. What was the name of that thing? Something Boy.
Yeah, I think a
Was it Game
virtual
Boy?
boy, virtual boy.
Virtual Boy, yeah, yeah, Virtual Boy, yeah. That terrible, terrible thing. But VR like the main way a lot of these stories had like showed addiction to these products and beyond like the actual interface. I mean, if you're interfacing through VR headset or a smartphone, oh sure, that's there's a difference there. But what they were actually doing inside the environment they were interfacing with, that's not really changed. So that was fairly well predicted in that they would get it was like a Huxley's world where Huxley predicted as opposed to Orwell that predicted the corpo and governmental world that would like really tell people what
Big
to do
yeah.
and rule people through fear and
Big brother stuff,
power.
right?
Big Brother. Huxley predicted the opposite, that people will be ruled through entertainment and like being like complacent and just like endless entertainment in the world, endless pleasures and that kind of stuff. And that world, so that's kind of cyberpunk
Yeah.
stuff also
Oh,
was also predicted in these stories, you know.
oh, I remember a movie actually,
Yeah.
which also really shows the prediction of what is going on today. Have you seen the Pixar movie Wall-E?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
where on that spaceship where everybody
Yeah.
is fat, sitting in a chair
Yeah,
which moves
exactly.
it by itself and
Yeah.
talking to a screen, doing
Yeah.
nothing, or
Just chatting each other. Yeah, that.
yeah, just watch. I think shorts
Yeah, they're
of in
just
the
sitting
future. Yeah.
around. It was funny. When was that movie out?
Oh,
2008, 2000 or
let's
later?
see, 2008. Well,
2008. Oh yeah. Well,
well
see,
done,
I mean,
Data.
yeah, yeah. That was like a random guess. Okay,
Yeah,
I did not know.
damn.
2008. So yeah. So
That
the
was
thing is,
that was before the smartphone, right? Or
this
social media on smartphone at least.
well, we had
Shorts,
social media.
shorts for
We
sure.
had
Yeah,
we had social media.
yeah, like MySpace,
And
but it was.
MySpace,
Anyways, it was
Facebook was around.
before having shorts or being addicted to screen
Yeah,
like
before they
it portrays. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. Before they figured out the endless timeline, before they figured out short form videos. I mean, Vine was the first one that did that. Remember
Oh
Vine
yeah.
with their
Yeah.
5 second videos? They started
hmm
that. They figured that out. And
Yeah.
yeah, so that's also there's a lot of cyberpunk elements in Wally, which is pretty
Yeah.
funny. And that has always been part of it. The addicted to media, addicted to the technology. That's always been a thing. That
Destroying our world.
yeah, exactly. So Huxley's world, destroying the world through apathy, through complacency, through addiction, instead of the companies outright exerting their power outright through police forces or whatever. You also see that in cyberpunk. A lot of cyberpunk media is a mix of both, because the world is also a mix of both. The more famous cyberpunk stories have the more overt power, like they're using corpo cops. The government is corrupt, blah blah blah. But they always have the element of the public being subdued through endless entertainment and these crazy technologies. When you see it in Cyberpunk 2077, where there's people that are completely addicted to the brain dance
Oh yeah.
stuff. And even like who was it? Was it the parents of one of the characters? They died because of that because they were like connected to
Damn.
one of the characters, the parents, they just like connected an IV to themselves and then just went into the brain dance and then it never came back out. That kind of stuff, and they just died because they their body just gave out. That kind of stuff. That happens in Cyberpunk 2077. But that idea of being obsessed in some way to the technology and you're
Mm.
interfacing with has always been a part of Cyberpunk, and that has been one of the main predictors of Cyberpunk. And yeah, we are we're there already. We've been
Yep.
there for the last 10 years. We're
Yep.
in the cyberpunk world when it comes to that. The interface is just not exactly what they predicted, but I mean, who cares? So like, it's
Mm.
the behavior it is what was predicted.
Yep.
Yeah.
So.
So that's pretty funny how that happens, because if you see a lot of these, like for example, even like Johnny Quest, the newest Johnny Quest show. I mean, newest. I mean, it's from the 90s. They had Quest World was this VR world where they went into,
Yeah.
and one of the
Oh, oh.
enemies of Johnny Quest, uh, he was maimed and his body was screwed up in an accident, and he became
Oh,
evil.
yeah.
And
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
he, you remember that guy? And then
I
he
think so. Yeah.
somehow, I don't remember the details, but somehow he got to interface with Quest World, and
Yeah.
he was completely obsessed with it, and he like completely, because he could finally move around, and he turned into this annoying digital enemy that kept going into Quest World and hijacking it and hacking it and whatever. And every time
Yeah.
they were in Quest World, somehow this guy was there screwing everything up like a virus, and it was just this guy. But in the real world, his body is completely mangled. It's like a Stephen Hawking kind of situation where he couldn't move.
Yeah.
So
But what was this
that was fun.
and
Huh?
what was this animation series about again? Why did they enter? Why was it every episode was about entering the VR world, right?
No, it wasn't. No, 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 no. Quest
Oh.
World is a training program that Benton Quest designed, and Johnny and his friends just ran around and played. It's just they Johnny Quest and his friends just used it like a video game, just running around playing games.
Ah.
But it's also a research program from Benton Quest. Johnny Quest is like you should think of it as like an Indiana Jones kind of character,
Mm-hmm.
and it's like a kid that's like his father is a researcher, and he often goes with his father to these things, and they get into these kind of international troubles with like uh,
Oh, good
kind of
times.
Indiana Jones. Think Indiana Jones, but it's a kid, and it's like
Yeah.
uh, you know.
And
Uh,
virtual. Yeah.
well, that's the newest one, because Johnny Quest, this series is a remake from the 1960s Johnny Quest, which
Oh.
did not have virtual reality. The 1960s Johnny Quest was way more Indiana Jones than the newest one. So,
Remember the first stages of 3D modeling
oh
in the
yeah,
Cartoon Network show, low polygon stuff.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, like reboot. That's that
Yeah, and Beast Wars. Yeah,
that
man.
Beast Wars. Oh my God, it's terrible. It's
Yeah.
just so
Yeah.
terrible. Yeah,
Yeah,
but
it's so terrible. It was
that
so nice to watch, man, as a
yeah,
kid.
I mean the graphics are like, oh my God, but that was like that period was kind of interesting because a lot of the technologies a lot of the technologies that were uh kind of predicted with VR with the cyberpunk stuff were kind of like starting to show up somehow, and you're wondering, and I always wonder if it's like uh it's like this chicken and egg thing.
Yeah.
Is it Does the technology show up because these people saw these shows
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
want to make
Exactly.
it, or
Yeah,
does the
and got
technology
inspired.
just
Yeah.
show, or does the technology just show up because that's what that's what
predict.
happens,
Yeah.
or you know, like
Yeah.
that's like the way technology goes in the
Yeah.
direction we're going. That's always this weird thing,
Yeah.
and that these shows predicted these behaviors of the companies is even more
Yeah.
interesting. That's the crazy part, you know.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
and what do you think, dear listener? What is first, the prediction or did people get inspired? Please leave a comment below, and also leave a comment below if you know a movie, media, or a book or whatever which also talked about the predictions of nowadays. We are very interested in that,
Yeah, definitely.
right, Data? And
Yeah.
by this note, I think we're going to end this episode.
Yeah.
So, everybody, dear listeners, thank you. Thank you for listening. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and see you in the next episode. Thank you. Later.
Later.